Yankee fans, you're in for a real treat. Bryan Hoch covers the Yankees for MLB.com. You follow him on Twitter, now on X. You see him on SNY. You see him on Yes Network, the MLB channel, on Zoom. He's everywhere. He's my favorite source for Yankee news, along with Jack Curry. It's my absolute pleasure to welcome Bryan Hoch. Bryan, thanks for joining us tonight.
Thank you for having me. Honor to be on with you. And yeah, and I'm happy we're able to make this work. So I'm looking forward to it.
Bryan, there's a lot of excitement in Yankee land. The Yankees heated up the winter meetings in Nashville. We know that with the Juan Soto trade. We'll talk about Juan in a little bit, but what I'd like to do is I'd like to look at the current Yankees through the prism of Aaron Judge. And with that in mind, let's start with your book, 62.
There it is.
Very, very well received, critically acclaimed.
Thank you.
First thing out of the box is, how does it make you feel that it's so well received?
I love it because, I feel like whether you're a Yankee fan or just a general baseball fan, if you're 8 years old, if you're 80 years old, there's something for you in this book. And that was kind of my goal there, is to kind of connect these three great Yankee right fielders in Babe Ruth, Roger Maris, and now Aaron Judge, who have all held this single season home run record that means so much in the grand scope of baseball. And so to kind of dive in and get to not just tell the story of Aaron Judge's season in 2022, which was one of the best offensive seasons that I've ever seen, but to get to compare it and do the flashbacks to 1961 and what was going on with Roger Maris and Mickey Mantle going back and forth, and to kind of bring them in as characters in the book, because that's the one thing the Yankees do better than anybody else, is they treasure their history and they celebrate their history. And so as much as a character as Aaron Judge was in this book, I also wanted Roger Maris and Mickey Mantle to be characters in this book too. And so hopefully, I think that there's something for every fan. If you pick up this book, you're not only just reliving 2022, but it's kind of a time capsule of all of Yankee history and baseball history.
I love it, Bryan. I love the touch of the foreword written by Roger Maris Jr. If you will allow, I just want to read the opening of the book, of the foreword by Roger. This record has been a big part of my life. I was almost 3 years old in 1961 when my father and his teammate, Mickey Mantle, chased an iconic record held at the time by Babe Ruth, who hit 60 home runs 34 years earlier. My dad hit his 61st home run on the season's final day, setting a new single-season home run record that would stand for nearly 4 decades. Many resented my father for breaking a mark set by one of the early legends of the game. But my father always maintained that records were made to be broken and that Babe Ruth was still going to be the hero he had always been. He was right. With that in mind, Bryan, I'd like to welcome in Mickey Mantle's son, Danny Mantle. Danny, thank you for joining us.
And thank you for having me, Mike. And Bryan, it's a pleasure to see you. I can't remember if we've ever met, but it's a pleasure to see you.
Thank you. Yeah, no, we have met a couple of those events at Yankee Stadium, but there's always a lot of people. So it's great to have you one-on-one here, or two-on-one, and get a chance to kind of catch up. But it's great to see you again.
It's a pleasure. And I honestly want to just say congratulations on the book. And
thank you.
Although I haven't got to read it yet, I really want to. And, that season that Judge had was just such an amazing season. And, not only breaking Roger's record, but how close he came to the Triple Crown, and of course, Dad had won the Triple Crown in '56, so I mean, that would have been so huge had he been able to do both of those, So that's what I was going to want to ask you was that a lot in his mind? Did he even realize how close he was to, getting the Triple Crown as well? I thought that was
Aaron knew because we were telling him every day that, hey, yeah. We're watching Luis Rise with Minnesota then, and then just tracking it as far as the batting chase was. And what I think what it showed was how difficult it is to do all three of those things, because as great a season as Aaron had, he was getting worn down at the end by the home run chase. He was not getting as many pitches to hit. So the at-bats he really did get had to count. And so, but if you talk to him, he always talks about the importance of hitting 300. He is a power hitter. He is, of course, but in his mind, he wants to be a 300 hitter too. And so, yeah, he was keeping tabs on that batting race. And it became clear at the very end that it was probably just too big of a gap for him to make up. I think he had about 8 batting average points in the last week to catch up. But there was even some talk. Aaron Boone went to him that last game and said, "Hey, do you want to play and try to," and this was after he'd hit 62. He said, do you want to try and catch up on the batting title? And he looked at what he needed to do. And I think it was something like he needed to go 7 for 9 and on the last day of the season. And he was just like, no, it's not going to happen. But I think it speaks to what a great player Mantle was. I mean, we all know that, but to even try to compare modern day to your dad's time, it's hard to do. It's hard to live up to that shadow for sure.
I just thought that was such an amazing season, man. I mean, it was, of course, Judge is my favorite player today. And, I've just watching him is just something, number one is his size, because, Dad was considered probably one of the bigger guys back in his day, and he was 5'11", 195, and I think Judge is like 6'7", 280 or something.
6'7", 280. Yeah, your dad didn't play against guys like that.
Oh man, and that was, to me, that's just an amazing, amazing thing for a guy, and as quick as he is in that right field, man. I mean, that's why I said he's my favorite guy, and just to see someone that size be able to move like that in the outfield is unbelievable to me, And I just wish my dad could be here to see, him play, that, because I know that he would be, and like you were saying, I don't know him personally, but just seeing him, listening to his interviews and, how he does take hold of the history of the Yankees and that type of thing is, it's kind of rare these days to see that. And, I'd seen a interview with him, and the guy had said, "Well, who's your Yankee Mount Rushmore?" Well, and he had the 3 of the guys in there were guys, it was Yogi, Dad, Ruth, and I think Mariano was his other one. But you can just tell that he, the history of the Yankees means a lot to him. So that means a lot to us as well. So I think it's just a spectacular. Not only is he a spectacular player, but he's just a all-around good guy. As far as I know, I'd love to meet him sometime. So.
And Bryan and Danny, very well said all the way around. And one of the things, Bryan, that I could tell you was during this chase, Danny and I would text each other like almost on a daily basis, and he truly was, rooting all the way along. But it was amazing to think, and at the season's end, and you guys touched on it, he finished with a 311 batting average. Luis Arraez 316, not that far apart.
Yeah,
that
5 points. How about that?
It's unbelievable, and that would have been
he was
amazing
ahead too for a while. I mean,
yeah,
there was. I mean, it was looking unbelievable. So,
I want to ask Bryan a question because I love what you guys gravitated to immediately was not just the home runs, but the batting average. And I think that is a very important issue. And Bryan, that's where later on, I'm going to tie that together with Judge and looking at the current team. But what is so interesting, and you mentioned, Bryan, just now, you said he was aware of it because we were constantly reminding him of it. But I also feel that he was inherently aware of it. And many times in the post game, he would bring it up. He would bring it up how important batting average was to him. And I think we know that it might be inscribed in his glove, 179, Bryan. I don't know if it is, but that was his batting average in his, truncated, 2016 season. So I think he's very aware of batting average, and I love it. Bryan, your thoughts?
Absolutely. Now, as a matter of fact, the last series of the year in Kansas City, when we were, trying to wrap up this Yankee season that did not go the way everybody thought it would, and they finished with 82 wins and didn't go to the playoffs, we crowded around Judge's locker, and he kind of opened the door a little bit for 10 minutes and started saying, and which he doesn't do often, but he said that things around here need to change. And one of the things that he pointed to was that, you know, we're looking at a lot of numbers, but we might not be looking at the right numbers. And so it turns out he was talking about batting average and RBIs, these staples of the game that I feel like a lot of people have gotten away from, and they're not focusing on anymore. And I think that they still work. They still work. If you have a team full of guys with high batting averages and lots of RBIs, you're going to win a lot of games. And so I think that's something he would like to see the Yankees prioritize more, because they've brought in a lot of these guys who hit, you know, 210, 220 and strike out a ton. And it just doesn't work all the time. It's not consistent enough. And you can't sit around and wait for the 3-run homer every single game. So I think that that's one way the game has definitely changed here. And maybe it's going to shift a little bit backwards, but and I do remember late in the home run chase, he was talking about Miguel Cabrera, and the Yankees were facing the Tigers. And he was just saying, look at Miguel Cabrera's career lines over his whole entire career. You hit 300 every year with some power, and you're going to wind up in Cooperstown. And that's where Miguel's going. And Aaron Judge is on that track too, if he can stay healthy. And that's been the big question, of course. He missed a lot of time this past year, but when he was on the field, he was very productive. And so the Yankees just need to figure out a way to keep him going and get him in 150, 160 games next year.
Brian, I love it. Since we have Danny, this ties into exactly what you just said, and just everything that you said, right on point. Danny, what I want to say is, one of the things that I remember, it's a very famous quote by your dad. He said one of his biggest regrets in baseball was he allowed his lifetime 300 batting average to dip just below 300. He ended his career at 298, Brian, because he held on for another year or two when he in retrospect should have retired. Danny, do we have that correct?
Yeah. And, that was the biggest, probably the biggest disappointment in his career, was going under the 300, because, back then, like Brian was saying, I mean, it was so important, because you went by your average, RBIs, strikeouts, which Dad held forever. Yeah, he hated that. But, his biggest threat, or biggest upset, was going under 300. But, back then, I think his biggest fear was, what am I going to do after I'm done playing? Because, back then you played year to year, you got a yearly contract. So it wasn't like you had a huge contract. So he had to keep playing. And, he always said, he goes, I could still hit. He said, but I couldn't run. And so he just had no running ability. And, he waited probably, because if you look at Willie Mays's lifetime average, it's only 302, which is nice. But I mean, Dad and Willie were always compared so much. I think Dad his biggest regret was not being over 300. So, because he knew he was a 300 hitter. And I think it just really got to him that he didn't keep that up, and had to stick around maybe a year or two too long. So, because like I said, he still had power. He just didn't have the wheels to get him around. So,
Danny and Brian, I'd like for you to weigh in on something else that I find very interesting about Brian's book. The title, Aaron Judge, the New York Yankees, and the Pursuit of Greatness. Now, what I found interesting is that the book does not end. The book continues. It goes into the postseason. Okay. Yes, they beat Cleveland, but it was not a good series against the Houston Astros for the Yankees, nor for Aaron Judge. I believe he was like 1 for 16 with a single up the middle. Now, my question is, Brian, was there any intent with the book in terms of telling the story, where when we talk about the Yankees and greatness, I feel it needs to culminate with a championship? As great as the accomplishment was, when he's chasing history, we know that Babe Ruth in 27, we know how that season turned out with a championship. We know in 61, Danny, we know what happened in 61. It ended up with a parade. Okay, Brian, was there any significance that the book continues a little bit beyond 62?
Yes, I went back and forth a little bit on that, because you want everything to be wrapped up in a nice tidy bow, and Judge hits the big home run and he takes his victory lap, but that it would not have told the complete story. And the pursuit of greatness there, it has kind of a double meaning in that, yes, he's chasing Roger Maris and Mickey Mantle that year, but he's also chasing a title. And that's how you get ultimate greatness in the Bronx. And I think we have a chapter in there called Unfinished Business at the end, where Judge talks about why he came back to New York, because he did not accomplish his mission. Yes, he broke the home run record and he put up some great individual numbers, but it's a team game. And, you know, when you're standing in right field and you're looking around, you don't see banners that say division champions or wild card winners. I mean, the Yankees are a team that has won 27 World Series titles, and we all know that, and they're the most successful franchise in professional sports. And if you're going to be the star player of the New York Yankees, if you're going to be the captain, if you're going to be someday in Monument Park, as I expect Judge will be, you're kind of judged on how many titles you brought in. You know, Don Mattingly is the one guy out in Monument Park who did not get there. But for the most part, a lot of these guys have World Series rings at home. And, you know, you look at the back of the baseball card, their numbers, they're proud of those numbers. But I think if you talk to every single one of those guys, what they really value is the championships. And I remember talking to Yogi about this, and how Yogi had 10 World Series rings. And it's just nobody will ever catch that. And so to be a part of that, I think that's how you get to that next level. And that's what Aaron Judge needs to do. And a lot of that is out of his control, of course. You're coming off a year where the team did not perform well, but he did his job. But now they got to put it all together. And as the captain, that responsibility is going to fall on him.
Well said. Danny, Mickey had 7 rings. Your thoughts?
Well, you know, excuse me. You know, obviously getting to the World Series, of course, you know, like Bryan was saying, I mean, you'd have to play in a heck of a lot of World Series like those guys did, you know, because Dad still holds, I think it's 6 records in World Series play. And so, but you would have to play in a hell of a lot of World Series to get there, you know. So let's see, I think he played in 65 games in World Series play. But one of the things that has stuck out to me, because I've watched a couple of interviews with you, Bryan, was that, you know, Aaron sounds a lot like Dad, because back then, I mean, a lot of the players, or all the players, really took care of those 2 guys, Roger and Dad, because, you know, they feel bad in a sense that they're the only ones getting all the, you know, the charades and all that. But you know, the players that are in your clubhouse are the ones that are going to help you pull through. And it sounds like he had that in his, you know, that year. And that means a hell of a lot, I think. So, but yeah, those, you know, to be able to play in the amount of World Series, because Dad, you know, in their first, or his first 14 years, they went to 12 series and they won 7 of them with Dad. So, you know, but I mean, those teams were so damn good that, you know, I mean, and Judge, I mean, I can see these teams that he's on, they, you know, they've got a chance to get quite a few in there. So, you know, just hopefully, you know, injuries and things like that don't get to Aaron, as, you know, like they have in the last couple of years. But, you know, he's a winner, man. He's a player, and I think, you know, he'll pull through it. So,
Danny, want to thank you for a few minutes, and it was fantastic. Bryan, before we move on, final thoughts with Danny?
Danny, fantastic to hear from you. I love your dad. He's my all-time favorite Yankee player. So it's just a real honor and a treat to get to chat a little bit about the current day Yankees with you, and hope to see you out at Yankee Stadium real soon.
well, me too, Bryan. And like I said, congrats on the book, and I am going to read it as soon as I can get one. And
Make sure I get a copy to you.
Well, thank you so much. And it was a pleasure meeting you and seeing you, and Mike, you too. Always a pleasure.
Danny, thank you so much. Merry Christmas to you and the family, and we're going to make sure we get that book out to you. Okay.
Yes, sir.
I'll talk to you very, very soon.
So much. And
Okay.
pleasure to see both y'all, and Merry Christmas.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Merry
Danny.
Christmas to you and family. Thank you. You know, Bryan, I just want to
Very cool.
Very cool, right? Okay.
Mhm.
I just want to mention that back and just dovetails exactly what we were talking about. Back in 2017, in real time, I wrote a column called Number 33 Was Different, and I put it on my website. And the first 32 home runs he hit in his Rookie of the Year season did not pull one fastball to left field for a home run. And that was something that it was not reported. I didn't hear it anywhere else, to be honest with you. But the reason why I'm saying it is, and when I wrote that, is number 33 was different, was he pulled a fastball down the left field line. And where most people were jumping up and down saying, yeah, it's number 33, I was saying, uh-oh, he's getting away from the formula. And what the formula was, and I loved it for April, May, June, and really most of July. Here's an interesting thing, Brian. At the All-Star break, he had a 329 batting average. After the All-Star break, 228.
You remember that?
Okay. Now the interesting thing is he starts pulling fastballs, and then you start pulling off the ball, etc. But I bet you, and I don't even know if Katie Sharp would be able to research this, but I bet you there's never been an instant where a home run hitter hit 32 home runs to the pull side without pulling a fastball. Now, for our viewers, I'm not saying he didn't pull a ball to left field, but when he did, it was always an off-speed pitch. So his approach was fastball, stay inside, up the middle, center, right field. Very Jeterian-like, except when Jeter was hitting, singles up the middle.
That kind of power, yeah.
To the Mohegan Sun.
Mm-hmm.
So
no, absolutely. And that's one thing, I know that we've talked to Aaron a little bit about that, and I didn't know that stat about the not pulling the fastballs there, but I do remember that being a talking point, that he wasn't pulling a lot of home runs. And I do remember him saying, well, what difference does it make as long as they go out? And I think that if you look at his career spray chart there, he has taken advantage a lot of right center field at Yankee Stadium, that power alley there. That's very friendly for him. And so that has worked really nicely. And I think it's a matter of looking at the dimensions of your ballpark, your home ballpark. And that was something that we had talked about. If he went somewhere else, how would his power translate to, say, AT&T Park in San Francisco? And his power numbers would have gone down if he became a San Francisco Giant. I think that had to be part of the equation for him too, that no ballpark would look, he's going to hit home runs no matter where he goes, but Yankee Stadium is a really nice fit for him and his career. And you add into that all the majesty and then kind of the tradition of being a Yankee. And this was just the place he wanted to be.
Absolutely, Brian. And what makes it fascinating, we'll just juxtapose with Juan Soto. It's really the opposite to a degree. There's stats, and you've thrown them out already, where he would have hit less home runs if he played the whole season last year at Yankee Stadium. Why? Because he likes to go to left center, and it's 399 to they used to call it Death Valley. So it's going to be fascinating to see if Juan Soto will make adjustments. We love the approach of what he does. It's going to be fascinating to see how he deals with Yankee Stadium. We know that you're excited to talk to Bryan Hoch. And what I want to say to Brian, Evelia is a diehard Yankee fan. She lives in New York. She was born in Panama. Can you guess who her favorite all-time
I'm going to guess
is?
number 42.
Wow.
I guess
See,
the great
that's why
Mariano.
Brian gets the big bucks.
That was an easy one, though.
There you go.
Yes.
He is the best.
Absolutely. But let's not forget there was other Panamanian that played baseball before him. I had Rod Carew and Robert Kelly. So when I go to Panama, I go to Roberto Kelly's restaurant. So
Oh, really? How's the food there?
Very good.
All right. If I wind up at Roberto Kelly's, what do I need to order?
Anything you want. That's a seafood, because Panama is close to the water. So you get seafood and all the good stuff that we actually have. I want you to know that your book is going to be one of those history books in baseball.
I hope so. Yeah. No, that's
62. Come on now.
No, I think it, obviously I got to live it in real time, but even while it was happening, I said something historic is happening here. And so Made sure to take as many notes as I could and do the extra interviews when I could, because I said this is going to be a period of time here, especially when it became the Aaron Judge show. And it wasn't just the Yankees in first place. The Yankees looked like a good team in the first half. Then it really became the Judge show, and everybody was tuning in for every single at bat. And we were all standing up and holding our cell phones and recording his at bats. And I said, we might not see this again. So I definitely, I hope it captured it. I hope the book captures it, not just for this year, but for years to come.
Absolutely. I thought a history book in baseball.
Love that. Thank you.
Yes. Now, based on that, I feel like I missed George Steinbrenner this year, because I think a lot of the trading that's taking place now would have happened like halfway through the season. However, how do you feel, because you spent so much time with 62, with this trade for him to go to center field? I'm afraid of injury or anything. And this young man, Juan Soto, he has the abilities of khaki and all of that. So how do you feel? Because I'm a little nervous.
I'm a little nervous too. I know that Judge isn't nervous. I know Judge loves it. He talks about how he's really always been a center fielder, and that's where he's wanted to be. And he calls it the best view in the house. And even though he's a right fielder, we've all seen him at right field. He played center field in college. He played a little bit in the minors. So that's where he wants to be. And I would say the one thing is, considering how much time he missed after running into a wall in right field, he probably won't run into any walls in center field. It might be a little safer for him. I think the problem would be just kind of calling balls, not running into your left fielder and your right fielder, because there's a lot of ground to cover, especially at Yankee Stadium. He'll have to go to his right and go into that left center field gap. We know Judge can move, though, and if they're saying he's completely healed from that foot injury, he seems to be. He looked pretty good in September. I didn't see him limping a lot. And now he'll have a whole winter to kind of rest and rehab it. I expect he's going to come in and be Aaron Judge 2022 again, and just playing a lot of center field, which is what he did that year also. It wasn't by design. They did it because they ran out of options and basically had to throw him out there. But it is something he's done before. So we'll see how it goes. But I think that with Soto coming in, Judge is a much better defensive outfielder than Soto. And with Giancarlo Stanton on the roster, he's going to be DHing a lot. So I think you kind of have no choice, but you want to put Soto in the area at Yankee Stadium in right field where there's less ground to cover. And then you can play him maybe in left field when you go to a place like Fenway Park. But Judge is going to see a lot of time in center field. So we'll see how it goes. I hope he doesn't crash into anybody or anything. And but I think you hit the ball to him, he'll catch it more often than not.
Absolutely. Bryan, thank you. Again, I look forward to your history book, and keep up the good work, keeping us informed.
Thank you so much. Appreciate that.
Okay, Evelia, let me just say this, Evelia.
Sure.
This book is coming to you. Okay, this is my Christmas treat to you.
Thank you.
What I want to say is, it is a terrific book. It's a page turner. You won't be able to put it down. Bryan Hoch is a thorough reporter. We wouldn't expect anything other than that, and it will not disappoint you. Now, what I want to ask you is relate, and Bryan's going to personalize the book. He's going to send it to you. Okay. Yes. And it's going to be personalized and signed by him. My question to you is, before you read the book, when Aaron Judge was running around the bases, when he did it, when he hit number 62 and he's just about to jump on home plate and his teammates were ready to jump on him, what was the thought that was going through your mind?
Oh my God, look what he's doing. This is history. I swear to God. And then to come to find out that someone like Bryan put it in writing, I wish I was that thoughtful, because maybe I would have been the one out there with 62 instead of Bryan. But Bryan, as I said, so I was like hilarious and ecstatic. And I told you, you could not hold me down at all, especially knowing how the season was going. So he offered that more what it took for us to remain Yankees fan to the end of the season. So it was the wonderful thing that could happen to anyone. And he's a person that brought so much more back to the Yankees, the way it used to be, his demeanor, his fun. It was just everything that a Yankee fan would like to have, and he offered it and gave it up. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
God bless you.
Love that. Well said.
Evalia, thank you so much.
To you both.
You're fantastic.
Thank you.
And the book is coming your way. And what I want to promise you is I know that Mariano is your favorite all-time Yankee. Guess what?
Yes.
Is my favorite modern all-time Yankee. Mickey Mantle is my favorite. I
Yeah.
remember home run number, 500 on Mother's Day, 1967. But of the modern era, Mariano is my favorite. So we have a little bit more left of the show after you. And
Can I
I'm going to be grilling
quickly to
Bryan
Bryan?
Hoch. I'm going to
Can
be
I just-
saying we better have our, closer in line. Do we have our ducks in a row here? Because you know what? Without Mariano, we don't have any rings yet, since the core four,
Yeah. I just want to say one thing quick to Bryan, so
Sure.
he knows that being from Panama, my son is Marcos Rivera, and just that the name still carries on with other people in Panama, so we feel like we're part of his family anyway.
Oh,
So
that's
my
great.
son will be ecstatic to know that he has the 62 in the house, and we can all be part of it. So thank you again.
I got to go to Panama. The Yankees played
Yes.
2 exhibition games there after
Yes.
Mariano retired. So we got to actually go for, I think we were there for
And
3
we'll be
days.
there.
It was amazing. It was
Yes.
such a fun trip. So
Isn't it great? Yes.
yeah, I mean, it's a place that unlike any I've ever been to. It's beautiful. The people were
Yes.
great. The food was
Yes.
great. So
I
I'd love to get back there someday.
We'll bring Mike with us.
No.
All right, sounds good.
Have a good night.
Okay. Greg, thank you for calling in. Say hello to Bryan Hoch.
Okie. Good to
What's
meet ya.
happening, Greg? How are you?
I'm doing okay. Happy holidays.
Happy holidays to you.
Greg, with the thought in mind of you calling in, you had a thought about Aaron Judge, and then you also have a question about the current team. So take your pick, hit the ground running.
Yeah, I think when it comes to Judge and the home run chase from 2 years ago now, I thought baseball was sort of lucky that we all got to follow it as a home run chase because it was the AL home run record that he was going after. And I think, that was sort of delivered with a wink, wink, because, the fans all sort of looked at him as being the true home run, chasing the true home run record. And, now that he got it, I think we all look at him as, the clean record holder, even though the record books may not reflect that. So my question, as somebody who is around the team, do you think that the players and the coaches feel that same way that the fans do? Or do they look at, Bonds and McGuire and Sosa's records as really holding up?
I can just tell you personally what I look at is Bond 73. It happened. I watched it, but I put that in a different box than Judge in 62. I think that, yeah, it seems a more linear successor to what Roger Maris did in 1961. And so, look, I'm not advocating for erasing the record books and McGuire and Sosa and all that, but I think we all just look at that period differently. And so I know Judge said all the right things when we asked him about it, and he said, no, Bonds is the record holder at 73, but like 73, I just can't even fathom. And I know how hard it was just watching it day in and day out for Judge to get to 62 and what a grind that was on his body. And he did it without any help. And so I think that you have to look at and take that into account, that he was doing it clean. And Roger Maris Jr. talks about that in the book, in the forward, and obviously he's quoted in there as well. But I think that if that's how the Maris family feels, then I think that carries a lot of weight for me too, as well, that they see Judge not only just for the fact that he's a Yankee and they like him and he's a great guy and all that, but he did it clean and he did it the right way. And I think that, I think 10 years from now, we can look back at Aaron Judge's 2022 season and say that really was a fantastic offensive season and he did it on the level. And I think that carries a lot of meaning and weight for me.
I think myself and a lot of Yankee fans also agree. Do we have time for me to ask a question about the 2024 roster?
Absolutely.
Let's do it.
Well, I'm sure that you're talking a lot about the outfield, considering that Soto is now here and Judge, of course. Let's talk about the infield. And, I'm wondering if you think that Volpe's struggles last year at the plate have impacted the way the Yankees view him as the long-term shortstop of the future. And, last week, or maybe it was 2 weeks ago, we saw a trade of one of their other shortstop prospects, Sweeney. And I was wondering if you look at that as maybe giving us a clue of whether the Yankees think that Volpe is still their future at shortstop because they traded, somebody who could have succeeded him soon.
Yeah. Yeah, everything I've heard is Volpe's the guy, and as much struggles as he had at times, at least until the chicken parm, he did wind up with a 2020 season, which is pretty good for a rookie who basically didn't play at AAA and got thrown into the big leagues. So I think that the way they're looking at it is that's the baseline, and I think a lot of the Jeter comparisons are not fair because Derek came up and won the Rookie of the Year and won the World Series his first year. Let's throw Derek out because Derek was one of a kind. I think that it's asking too much. And I've seen this before with Didi Gregorius came in and everyone's like, well, he's the new Jeter. It's like, no, he's not going to be the new Jeter. He's going to be Didi Gregorius. And he was pretty good. He was a good Yankee shortstop. So I think Volpe needs to just be his own player at this point. We see a lot of the talent there. I think he's probably going to be an all-star. I don't know if he's going to be a Hall of Famer, but that's a high bar to set when you're talking about Derek Jeter and 3,000 hits and Hall of Fame and all the World Series and everything. So I think that we need to cool it on that and just say, can he be the best Anthony Volpe that he can be? And defensively, look, he just won a Gold Glove award. I actually didn't look at him for a lot of the year as a Gold Glove contender. And, maybe if things had worked out differently in Tampa Bay, maybe he wouldn't have, but it is what it is. So I think that they're going to lock in on him at shortstop. He's going to get time and room to grow. And that's one thing that Hal Steinbrenner has talked about is that he sees Volpe and Oswald Peraza as the future of the Yankees infield. Now, where are they going to figure out a path for Peraza to play? That's my bigger question here. Is Gleyber Torres on this team on opening day, or do you trade him for a pitcher, let's say? I think I'd rather keep Gleyber at this point, but I guess, they're open to anything that makes sense. And so around the infield, you have Rizzo at first and Gleyber at second and Volpe at short, excuse me, and DJ LeMahieu at third. And then you go in with Peraza kind of knocking on the door, looking for a way in. And, on paper doesn't always work out, but sooner or later guys get hurt and play room to play opens up. So I think Volpe and Peraza both can have a bright future here. I was happy to see that they were able to get the Soto trade done without including Peraza, because I think he's going to be a good one.
Certainly guys get hurt on the Yankees. We know that.
Oh boy, do we ever. Yeah, just all you got to do is look at that page that we do during the season that says, roster moves and injury updates, and it's like 2,000 words long. And you got guys that you forgot were even on the team, and you're just saying, oh yeah, he's throwing a bullpen in Tampa. So they give us a lot to stay busy.
I was going to say that keeps you busy for sure.
Right.
No doubt.
And Brian Cashman gave you a lot to keep busy with some of the comments that he made in Scottsdale. And one of the ones that kind of, I guess, maybe unintentionally, caught headlines was he was kind of almost predicting that Giancarlo Stanton would get hurt again. We hear now that he's going to be coming in leaner and meaner, hopefully, so to speak. I don't know if that was a slip of the tongue by Brian Cashman, or was that playing a little bit of like psychology or whatever, but that will remain to be seen. But as both of you gentlemen said, we'd like to see a much shorter IL list and all of and all of that without question. But great point, Greg, to ask that question about Volpe. And what I find interesting is like you use the word disappointment in terms offensively. It would be interesting, and just as Brian mentioned, they're probably happy with it from the Yankees standpoint, because they're a little too home run centric in their minds. Now he hit 20 home runs, stole 20 bases, which is something they desperately needed. I noticed something, Brian, that I think was attributable to him, a quote where he said, I'm not going to hit 209 ever again. Something like that. He did say something like that. That resonated with me. It almost reminded me of what Brian and I were talking about earlier, where Judge had inscribed in his glove 179 and all of that. Brian, I think he's motivated to get the batting average up. And I think that Aaron Judge, what we were talking about earlier, is setting a tone where he has Hal's ear.
Yeah.
And it's fascinating. I think that's one of the most fascinating things about Aaron Judge. Your thoughts?
They're almost partners at this point. I feel like it really ramped up with negotiating that contract, because as I talk about in the book, they bypassed Cashman. Basically, Steinbrenner went directly to Judge and said, "Hey, what's it going to take to get this done? Like, let's get it done." And Hal was in Italy on vacation at that time, and he dropped everything to take care of business back home. And Judge told him that, "Hey, I need the 9th year, but other than that, if you give it to me, I'm going to be a Yankee." And so after they agreed to that, that's when Hal dropped on him. And one more thing, I'd like you to be the captain, like my favorite player, Thurman Munson, was. And so that's how Judge got the captaincy there. It wasn't kind of dangled for him. They didn't say, "Hey, if you come back, we'll make you captain." It was only once he'd already agreed that they did bring him back. But yeah, that line of communication has remained open. And so Judge has he spends his off seasons in Tampa. He's actually building a new place in Tampa now because he's got the money to do it. And so why not? Good for him. But I know that he drops by and talks to Hal, not only at the ballpark, but sometimes at home. And so it's kind of unlike anything that I've seen in my time covering the Yankees. I don't even think Derek Jeter had that kind of line of communication. I know Derek could always talk to George when he wanted to, but I don't think it was as friendly and as chummy as it seems to be with Hal and Judge. And so this is really Aaron Judge's team, and he's almost kind of part of the family now, where if Hal has any questions about what's going on in the clubhouse, he'll go directly to Aaron. And to flip that, if Aaron sees a problem or something that needs to get taken care of in the clubhouse, he doesn't have to ask Aaron Boone or Brian Cashman. He can go directly to the owner because we know they've got their cell phones, and he can bypass everybody. So it is kind of a new chapter here in Yankee history where I don't think we've kind of seen this dynamic before, where Hal not only considers Judge an employee of the team, but he is kind of part of the ownership group almost at this point.
Great point. Bryan, one surprising thing about this interview so far is that Penny hasn't photobombed you yet, but Greg has something to say on that regard. Greg?
I'm so happy you brought that up. I mentioned it when I learned that you would be a guest. I'm a father of a daughter, and I love those videos. She's so adorable, but I also, I know behind the scenes it must take so much work to be able to coordinate that and get it, and get it all, sort of framed up and have her, you could see sometimes there's a little editing that goes on between takes. And over the season, sometimes I'll grab my daughter and I'll say, "Oh, you got to see this," so she knows her as Yankee Girl. And they're just great, and it's a great testament to what baseball fandom really is to all of us. We watch it when we're young, and we learn the team and the players. We go to the ballpark. It's a bright, sunny day, and it's the most amazing environment. And it's great to see it through the eyes of a kid. So I really appreciate when you do that.
No, that's the idea. And, we started that during a really dark time in COVID, and when we were just looking for something to hopefully help people smile about. And it's kind of continued. But Penny's 7 now, and that's when I bought my first pack of baseball cards, and it became this lifelong obsession and love for me. And so really kind of the clock starts in 1989 for me when I'm 7 years old, and that's exactly her age now. So it's fun when we open a box of cards, we rip them open. She looks through my stuff from work and says, "Oh, who's this guy? Oh, there's Nestor Cortez. I know Anthony Rizzo." And it's really cool. It's cool to see her get to know all the players, and she's got her favorites. Judge is obviously number one in her book, but it's cool that she's learning other players around the league too. And she just came in here the other day and was asking me about where Shohei Ohtani is going to sign. I was like, "Are you kidding?" I think he's going to go to the Dodgers, but why are you asking me? She goes, "I was just wondering." She said, "I was just wondering if the Yankees would get him." And I was like, "I don't think so." So,
You're going to teach her a new phrase, deferred money.
Yeah, right. Boy, you're not kidding. Wow. I mean, if you can convince anybody to take that contract, you should. Yeah, I mean, everybody should sign those kind of contracts. So, but he went to LA, of course. And so, yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. And we've got a third on the way. So we got a new cast member coming in. So very soon here, a third girl will be coming in January.
Congratulations,
Greg,
and good luck.
Thank you.
Greg, great thoughts. And we thank you so much for joining us. And I just want to say to you in closing that there is a book coming your way. I just want to say to you, Merry Christmas, and thank you for sharing your thoughts. And what I want to say is that Bryan will be personalizing the book and sending it out your way. So I want to thank you very much for joining us. And
that's great. I can't wait.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Greg.
Thank you. Happy holidays. Yep.
Same to you.
One more person that I requested that we send a personalized book. His name is TJ. He lives down in Arkansas. He's an interesting gentleman. Diehard Yankee fan. Was born upstate New York, and then he played college ball at the University of Arkansas. Was a catcher. He's got pretty good lineage, pretty good DNA. He's related to Corey Seager. His mother's
Oh, wow.
maiden name is Seager, and he wanted to join us tonight, but he had a family event to attend to. But he said, please tell Bryan that I was looking forward to speaking to him. But he's got two concerns. One of them is pitching, and specifically, if we have to pivot with the starting pitching, if Yamamoto doesn't work out, then bullpen. He's concerned in general with that. And the other thing is he does not like the feel of Soto as a rental. And he says, Bryan, what is it going to take? 12 years, 600 million, that's 50 million a year. It seems kind of plausible. What's your thoughts on that, and where are we going with that? So if you can't speak to TJ's point.
Sure. Yeah, no, the answer on Soto is it's going to take a lot. And my takeaway from that introductory Zoom we had with Soto earlier this week, first of all, why was it a Zoom? That was my first question, because typically you get those big events when you get a big player or a big signing, an import or trade. You get those events at Yankee Stadium. You want to see Garrett Cole holding up the jersey and the hat, and Judge doing the same when he became the captain. And I feel like the fact that it was a Zoom and Soto was in Miami, that was kind of set off a little alarm bell. It's like, oh, all right, this might not be a permanent thing. They might be all looking at this as a 1-year rental, and we'll see where it goes. So it did not give me the same feeling of permanence that some of those other deals did. Even when they traded for Giancarlo Stanton, they flew him to the winter meetings. They did the whole thing with Brian Cashman and Hal Steinbrenner and holding up the jersey. So we haven't had that moment yet. We've seen him in a hat, and so I feel like it does have a temporary feel to it. What's it going to take to make it permanent? Yeah, you're right. I mean, it's Scott Boras, so they're going to get top dollar, and you've got players like this don't become available very often. You're going to have a guy 25, I think, going on 26, going in his free agent year, and I assume he's going to have a great offensive season at Yankee Stadium. So yeah, I think $50 million a year, as crazy as that is to talk about, that might be the asking price. And so you're probably going to have to top that Aaron Judge contract. You've got a guy who's younger, he's left-handed, but he's not as good a defender. He's not as good a base runner as Judge. So there are some kind of warts in his game. What he's going to give you is power and patience. And he's going to really help that Yankee lineup that needed help so desperately and was 25th in the majors in runs scored last year. So I guess it's kind of like it's a tryout in a lot of ways. You get to see if the fit is good, if he gets along with everybody, how he handles New York. I think he's going to do okay with that. It seems like he's built for the spotlight, wants to play on the East Coast, big moment. But I'd be very surprised if they're able to work out a deal before he reaches free agency, just based on Scott Boras's track record. Scott always directs his players to the open market so he can get the biggest contract, and not necessarily always the best fit for the player. Now, if Juan Soto has a great first half and starts banging his feet and says, Scott, you have to work out a deal, you have to keep me with the Yankees, I'm sure they'll figure that out. But I feel like everything I felt to this point is let's see how this goes. We'll get together after the year and you can offer us a big check, and 29 other teams might do it too. And we'll see how it happens. So yeah, I'm not going to dissuade anybody from buying a Juan Soto jersey, but just know that there's a chance this time next year, I might be buying one on a different team.
Great points all the way around, Bryan. I agree with you 100%. I had the same feel with the Zoom. I get a kick out of you. It's you're very hardworking. It's just amazing. But you do it with a smile on your face, humor, and I really got a kick out of when you heard that Topps was selling, quote, event worn hat and shirt cards from Juan Soto. The hat cards were $349.99 and the shirt cards were $99, and your retort was how much for the shirt I wore to ask a question on Zoom?
Well, we were all just kind of on the internet asking questions. So yeah, exactly. If Juan Soto's hat goes for $350 for a little piece of it, then, you know, I was part of that Zoom too. So no, I'm just joking. I don't expect anybody to buy my shirt. Although if you want to, you can contact me and I'll mail it to you. But yeah, I just, that was funny to me because he's sitting in his living room in shorts and a shirt and putting on the Yankee hat. He wasn't even at Yankee Stadium. So I guess it's part of baseball history and a collectible. I guess it proves that they're smart marketers, because a Yankee hat costs what, about $30 retail, and so yeah, it's an instant profit margin. Good job by Topps and whoever's running that show.
But two quick things, one humor and then the other one a serious note. On the humorous side, tongue in cheek, at the end of every game you do the hokey pokey, and that's what it's all about, right?
That's
Okay,
right.
so with that in mind, how about a Pokemon card?
Ooh, Pokemon card. I like
Okay.
that.
Now, at the end of every game, you take it, and then what you say is, all right, I'm going to, just as they're doing with the t-shirt, you take the scorecard. You do a great job with the scorecard. No one else does. And well, boy, I have so many thoughts in my mind here, but one of the things that I wanted to ask you about in this book at the end of it, Bryan, it's just chock full of just everything, and you have the scorecard in there. And is it true that scorecard, when they saw it, was requested by none other than the Hall of Fame?
Wow, you did your homework, because I don't even think I've made a big deal about that yet, but it is one of the coolest things that has happened, is that now is in Cooperstown. And I have a nice letter from the Hall of Fame saying, you know, thank you for your generous donation of the scorecard. And but yeah, that was the scorecard I used that day in October 4, 2022 in Arlington. And just the fact that something I wrote on is now as part of the Hall of Fame's archive, that's crazy, and that'll be there forever. And I love that. That's definitely one of the coolest things in my career, is that I just can't believe they would even want that, but now it's part of the Hall of Fame collection. And so I can say, you know what? I learned pretty early on I was not going to make the Hall of Fame as a player. And so hard as that is to believe. So I knew that if I was going to do anything in baseball, it would have to be on the media side and writing and covering the sport that I love. And just the fact that a piece of paper I wrote on is now part of Cooperstown, New York. It's really, it kind of floors me in a lot of ways. Like, it's just really cool.
Well, I was gonna follow up on the Pokemon card, but you give that one some thought. I think that might be a winner.
That's good.
You take the scorecard, put it on the back. I'm going to give my son Anthony credit for it because he came up with that idea. It would be perfect. But now you touched on something else. You said, you're never going to be in the Hall of Fame as a player. Were you in Scottsdale or no? And I think I know where you were. Okay. You were at fantasy camp, and
Yes.
Bryan, it was just a quick kind of thing, but I have a coach's eye. And I noticed you at the plate. I saw you take it, whatever it was that I saw. You look like you could swing that bat. What's your background in terms of, your own baseball acumen? And basically you look like, a slugger. I'll leave it at that.
Thank you. I appreciate it. That's very kind of you. My batting average didn't look great that week at fantasy camp, but I did all right. I held my own. The important thing was staying on the field. And so, yeah, my problem now is I can't move base to base anymore after ACL surgery and Achilles and all that. So I'm a DH, a station to station DH. But yeah, I played in high school and a little bit during college, but that's in the Wayback Machine. And yeah, I realized once I just started having more fun talking to the guys who do it really, really well, rather than the frustration of it. And I tell you what, the game looks a lot easier from the press box than it is down on the field. And so, yeah, but I grew up loving baseball, wanted to be a part of it in some form or fashion, and was fortunate to come around when the internet did, and started blogging when in the mid 1990s, the dial-up internet days back in the old AOL. And we didn't even know what blogs were at the time, but that was my high school career, and opened some doors in journalism, told me that it was something I really wanted to pursue in life. And yeah, baseball, just playing ball, was fun for me. This is a career. And so I'm very lucky to turn something I love into my work. And what's that old saying? If you love what you do, you'll never work a day in your life. And I mean, that's pretty close to true. There are some days, the rainouts and the double headers and all that, maybe you're missing some events at home that you want to be a part of. But at the end of the day, you get paid to go to the ballpark. What better dream is that?
It is. It's a dream come true, and you do it so well, and you bring so much
Thank
joy
you.
to so many Yankee fans. Starting with myself. So I appreciate it, and I thank you for that. You also got a hit off of Jeff Nelson, and I think it might not have even been a hanging slider. Maybe it was one of his better ones.
I told Nelly the day before that, and this is in a way back. I did fantasy camp in 2010, I think, for a story. And then now I went back in 2023, which is what, 12, 13 years later, to try it again and kind of update the story. And I'll tell you what, it was harder. It was harder here at 41 than it was back then. But yeah, we were out at the bar, and that's the fun thing as far as fantasy camp. If you've never been, yes, you play the games, but you also get to hobnob and hang out with the guys the same as you would if you were a major leaguer in the clubhouse. It's a full experience. So you're all staying in the same hotel, and who else are you going to hang out with? So I wound up at the bar with Nelly that night, and I said, listen, if I get to face you in the game tomorrow, I want you to try to get me out. Don't put a cookie over the plate. And he said, all right, fine, I will. And then I wasn't sure if. So I get up in the first inning, and I'm facing Nelson, and I'm like, what do you think is he going to do here? Is he going to groove me one? And I stand there, and it came in hard. And I was like, oh, okay, we're doing this. And I guess at that point, he's probably throwing about 85. And he throws another one, and I swing through it, 0-2. And then he snaps off his slider on 0-2. And it slowed down just enough that I was able to kind of stick my rear end out and this awkward swing and kind of flare it over the second baseman's head for a single. But you know what? It's a single. One of the greatest athletic achievements of my life there. I singled off Jeff Nelson, who was trying to strike me out. So I'll take it.
Yeah, that is phenomenal. And Jeff Nelson, just, as you know, from that 96 to 2000 dynasty years, he was
Nasty.
he was so nasty, and he was part of that bridge along with Mike Stanton to Mariano. I mean, all of these things, Brian, as we talk, and the time has flown by, so I'm going to thank you, and we're going to close it out in a minute. But when you think about everything that we talked about, and you think about the current Yankees, there is just so much that goes into winning a championship, and it just can't be overlooked. And when you looked at that dynasty team, it was just a lot of things that we talked about tonight that they're either missing, or maybe this light bulb has gone off over their head. But Aaron Judge is the one that is pointing out a lot of these things to Hal. So it's not only that he has Hal's ear, but he's also going counter to the analytics department, if you want to say it that way. So this is fascinating. And this is why your book is so great and fascinating, because Aaron Judge is such an integral part of this team on and off the field that it's just the book has been written, but it's to be continued. And just as we said, it's got to end up with a championship. It's got to end up with a parade down the Canyon of Heroes. And Aaron understands this. So it's my opinion, and I wonder what you think about this. Some people are afraid, and they're writing it already, that if, let's say, Soto gets more per year, that Aaron would get his nose out of joint. And maybe I'm not so sure about that, because I think he emulates Jeter a lot. He's got a lot of his mannerisms, and the way he adjusts his hat and the way he clears his throat with the post game, and he talks without saying it. Like, he's just a lot of things that he does.
Oh, you've noticed that, huh? He's very good at saying a lot without saying a whole lot. Yeah.
And Jeter wasn't the highest paid player during the dynasty years. I think he'll accept it, because I think he realizes that you got to win a championship, or else it's just going to fall short in Yankee universe.
Yeah, I agree with you. And here's the thing is that Judge, this is probably his last contract, right? He's going to get this 9 years and $360 million. So you're going to tell me that 7 years down the road, no Yankee will be making more than $40 million a year because it's the Aaron Judge cap? I don't think that's what Judge wants either. And so, look, he got his money. He's fine. And, like I said, he's building his house in Tampa, and he can have his place in New York. Like, he will live comfortably. His grandchildren's children will live comfortably. But what he needs now to focus on, and I think Aaron's very good at this, is he's never selfishly me, look at me, look how good I am. That was never part of the Judge narrative, and you saw it during the home run chase, and to our frustration at times, because it was kind of like you'd talk to this guy and be like, "You're doing something historic," and it's like, "Yeah, but it's about the team." And it's like, I don't want to talk about the team. I want to talk about you right now. So he's very good at deflecting and keeping his focus on what's important. And I think that there was a lot of anger and disappointment this past year, especially not because of Judge, but because of they wasted a really great year from Garrett Cole. And the fact that you have Cole winning the Cy Young Award and you couldn't even get this guy a single postseason start in that year. And so that just makes the window close a little bit more. And now getting a guy like Soto, even if it is a 1-year rental, that opens the window up a little bit more here, where you can look at this team. If they ran it back, I don't know how you convince people and say, well, yeah, now they'll try it again and now they'll win. And I didn't see that, and people weren't going to rush out and buy their season tickets. So I think that now you bring in a guy like Soto. If they can go get Yamamoto, even double so now, and you can kind of push that window open, Carlos Rodon can bounce back maybe and be what they thought he was going to be, because that was a disappointment in year one. These are all parts to getting that championship window, because it is hard to win in the playoffs. But I understand that it's difficult to get there, but 2009 was a long time ago. And so, Mike, I don't need to tell you that Yankee fans are getting a little impatient here. And if I'm the Steinbrenner family, I'm getting impatient too, because you hear this narrative about Hal Steinbrenner and how he's not willing to spend. But look at the names he spent on. I mean, they went and they spent on Judge. They spent on Cole. They brought him in. They spent on Rodon. They traded for Giancarlo Stanton. Spending is not the problem. It's picking the right guys to spend on and building the supporting cast around them. And I think that's where they've been caught short, is when you get down to that second line, the third line, when injuries hit, they haven't had the guys when they're starting, Franchi Cordero and Billy McKinney in the outfield. That wasn't the Yankees. And they gave way too many starts to guys like Isaiah Kiner-Falefa, who was actually a really nice player for them, but he didn't belong in center field either. And that kind of showed where their construction was short last year. And so on paper, they got a good team, but now they got to go out there and get it done. But I think that everybody understands what the stakes are here. And, it's Judge's legacy too. You don't want to be the Yankee captain for a time where they didn't get a World Series title.
Well, Brian, I mean, everything is just spot on. What you said also about the Cy Young year with Garrett Cole and how it was really wasted. And what really is frustrating was his last start was probably his best start. And when he was going in, he would have been going into the postseason, it's just unbelievable. And Brian, I just want to say, this is one of the things that I focus on so often. I've had a website for a lot of years, a TV show and everything else like that. One of the key things is when it comes to pitching, I'm such a proponent of velocity differential. And it's not only your fastest pitch, it's what's your slowest pitch. Because you're a terrific hitter. You could slug, but if somebody wants to pull the string on you, Brian, what's going to happen? That's what separates. You're right. And basically what it is that Garrett Cole, when he throws that knuckle curve, it's not only the different shape, but it's his slowest velocity pitch. It gives you 15, 16 miles an hour differential. Rodon, when he came to the Yankees, what was his problem and mistake is that he's fastball slider exclusively. He just abandoned his changeup in San Francisco. It jumped off the page at me. I was in agreement, like, get this guy. But I was also saying, why did he abandon a changeup that he threw 10% of the time? You're going to come to the American League East. You're going to be throwing fastballs and sliders. And Toronto, they're smart. They do their homework. Boston, they're smart. They do their homework. And others. And that's exactly what happened to him. He started incorporating the curveball and the changeup as the season went along. And he started kind of doing okay, but then he kind of maybe hit it down. But this is a concern if he's going to be the number 2 starter. They better take a close, hard look at that kind of stuff, because I am a big Hal Steinbrenner fan. And it sounds like you are too. He spent enough money. It's just they're not getting enough out of it. That's why Aaron Judge is going to be fascinating, because he's talking about batting average, and you get a little bit of a feel that that's going to be a tone. We heard Hal Steinbrenner say we're going to look at bunting. Remember when he said that? It's just like,
Yeah.
maybe it wasn't the time or place for him to say it. Yankee fans didn't want to, but Brian, this is some of the things that I think Aaron is whispering, into Hal's ear.
I think that no Yankee fan watched the 2023 Yankees and said, you know what this team doesn't do? They don't bunt enough. But I do grant you that to go back to the Rodon thing, I don't think he was ever fully healthy. He had one start in spring training. I don't even think we got to see him again until July. And I think that he was going out there incomplete. He was probably pitching at 60 or 70% of what he should have been. But I do remember, and you just jogged my memory on this, that at the press conference, he was asked that question about why did you abandon your changeup, and are you planning to just be a fastball slider guy? And his answer at that time was yes, because he said, well, if they're not hitting it, why would I change? Well, guess what? Now you've been humbled a little bit. Now you can come back to the drawing. I think he even softened on that in September. He said something along the lines of, I'm going to have to make a lot of changes when I come back next year. And so maybe that's what you need. Maybe you get that kick in the rear end and it sends you into the offseason. We've talked now twice tonight about Judge and that 179 batting average in 2016. And I remember him talking about putting it at the top of his iPhone. And so he would look at it every time he opened his phone, the 179, and it kind of drove him that offseason to go and fine-tune his hitting and become he came back and won Rookie of the Year and hit 52 home runs and probably should have won the MVP that year too. So Judge in 2017 certainly used that motivation to his advantage. And, for a guy like Rodon, he's a professional, right? He needs to, whatever you can take to get you to the next level. And so I think nobody wants to go out there and fail and struggle, and no matter how much money you're making. And so I think he should come in motivated to right the ship and have a better year in 2024.
Brian, you're not only a terrific reporter, you're a terrific person. And it just makes it a pleasure. It makes it an absolute pleasure to follow the Yankees through your eyes. You bring us into the locker room, and you do it with humor and a smile but a thoroughness. I was going to joke with you and say, if you have to retweet anything, or it's my phone will chirp because I have you on. I have the alert on. That's you're my go-to person. So it's just been an absolute.
I'll try not to spam you too much, and try to let you sleep at night once in a while, unless it's really important.
Bryan Hoch, I want to wish you happy holidays, and I want to thank you for taking time to be with us. It's been an absolute thrill. I know Yankee fans will enjoy this. I'll put it on social media and throw it out there. And again, look forward to the people that you spoke to getting their personalized books, because it'll be a thrill for them.
Absolutely. Great. Thank you so much for having me, Mike. This was one of the most fun Zooms I've done all year. So a nice way to wrap up the year. And we covered a lot of topics. We got a good conversation. So I enjoyed it. Thank you so much.